guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be having a go at making Luca from the new Disney film Luca. I watched this at the weekend and I really enjoyed it, and I just thought it'd be so much fun to turn it into a cake for you guys to see. So I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for weekly videos. I've started with an iced cake drum, so it's a fairly large one. It's 18 inches wide, and I've just covered it in some blue fondant as a background, and I'm going to put that to one side while I work on the cake itself. I've got a 10-inch round cake drum, fairly thin, or cake card I should say, and I've printed out a picture of Luca to roughly the size of my cake card, cutting out kind of his hair or scales, whatever they are that float off his head. And I'm just going to cut my cake card to the same shape of his face. So my cake itself is 10 inch, and I'm just going to colour my buttercream with a little bit of green. And we're just going to put a little bit of that in between the two layers. Now, I don't have to do a lot of shaping to this cake because his face is almost round anyway. So it's not going to take too much work to get it to the right shape. But I'm still going to put my template on there for a little bit of guidance. And there's a couple of little bits where my cake doesn't quite stick out quite as far as the template. So what I'll do is I'll maybe stick some extra cake on that bit later and keep hold of your offcuts. I'm just going to stick this to my cake card so that I can lift it up easily without the cake falling to pieces. And I'm going to cut out the eyes and the mouth so that I know whereabouts these need to be cut into the cake. And I've put a little slit just above the top of his nose as well. So just mark with your knife. So I'm cutting reasonably deep, but you don't have to cut it all out. It's more just that I'm making a mark at first. So we're going to remove what we can of the mouth and roughly the eye area. So I'm just kind of sloping it inwards for the eyes, taking a little bit off the forehead so the forehead slopes backwards. And I'm going to use a little bit of the offcut that I took out of the eye to put back on that nose area. But don't bring the nose out too much. It only wants a little bit. And then a tiny bit on the top of each cheek as well. Once you've done that, we're going to cover the whole thing in the buttercream. If you prefer, you can use chocolate ganache. It will dry much firmer underneath, but for this, buttercream works okay. The trickiest bit was getting it in the mouth. And then I want to try and smooth it off a little bit. So I've just got a flexible scraper, and I'm trying to bend it a little bit as I scrape it over the buttercream that I've put on there. Now, I won't get it perfectly smooth. Anybody that watches my videos regularly know that I'm not overly brilliant with buttercream, but it will be smooth enough that it works okay underneath my cake. So stick that in the fridge just for 5-10 minutes, just so it starts to firm up a little bit. And I'm going to use some green paste, fondant, I should say, sugar paste, to cover the face itself. So it's much paler in colour than the face of Luca, but what I'm going to do is add more colour to it afterwards in edible powders. Make sure you've rolled your fondant large enough that it covers the whole face, and press it down gently, especially into the mouth and eye areas. You can keep putting your template back on there just so that you can check you still got it to the right kind of shape. Especially with the eyes, I'm going to mark around them a little bit and then just press in where I want those eyes to go. So those eye sockets are in there. I'm going to take off any extra from around the bottom. Keep hold of your offcuts. I don't have a huge amount of offcut here, but I'm going to need that later for his little ears and neck. So I'm just going to use a balling tool to put in the nostrils. At this stage, he's looking a lot like a turtle. I know when I put him in my Instagram stories and I asked people to guess what he was, most people guessed as a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. I guess you could make a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle the same way. But look at the colours on your template as well. Or you can just use reference straight off your phone or from the film. And I'm trying to colour him a little bit bluer at the top and then deeper green near the bottom. And I'm using the edible powders. I'm going to put links below the video, guys, to everything that I've used so that if you want to use the same things, you can do. We'll darken up inside the nostrils. I just want a tiny bit of pink fondant in the bottom of his mouth for the tongue. I'm going to put some black powder in for the back of the mouth. Now, if you want, you can just use black fondant to cover a thin layer in the back of the mouth. But because I had powders here ready, I thought it was just as quick and easy for me to just dust in there. So while you've got the black powder, if you want to darken anywhere else, like in the nostrils, then you can do that. So I've got some pale yellow. I think this is the pastel yellow colour I've got in the pre-coloured fondant. And I'm just going to use this for the eyes. So again, keep looking at the shapes of the templates to help you with the eyes. I didn't get them exactly the same shape as my template on this, but I think they're near enough that it's okay. At this stage, it looked a bit weird. But I think when when it was finished, they worked out. They were fine. So I've removed the eyebrows from a template so I can mark roughly the size and shape of them on my cake again. So you can't really see where I've marked it. It's very faint. But I'm just going to go with the black edible dust and a small brush just over those eyebrow areas. And also a little bit just around the outside edge of the eye. I'm going to go over with a little bit of green just on the eyes, because if you look at the cut out paper bits of his eyes that I've got on either side, you'll see they are slightly green, especially the eye that's smaller on like the far side of him, so on my left hand side, is much darker, so I'm just putting a bit of green on that. And then what I'm going to do is for the pupils and iris, I'm going to colour them. So I'm actually just going to stick it on in white fondant. So I've rolled it really nice and thin and cut them out. Again, looking at the templates for the shape, just make sure they're firmly stuck down. Just holding the templates over the top so you guys can see them. And again, use the template so you can draw around where the pupil is. Usually I would go for a brown and then just darken it, but I thought on this one I'm going to just keep it white and then we're going to just paint the colour on. So I've got a Sugar Flare Chestnut Brown that I'm going to use on this one. And I'm going to try and have it so it's a little bit shaded, so darker around the very outer edge, and then it's going to be paler towards the middle. And then I'm just going to use black. So that black powder we were using earlier, but I've mixed it with dip-in solution this time to create a paint for the pupils. If you don't want to use dip-in solution, you can use clear alcohol or you can use lemon essence as well. It works better than mixing the powders with just water. So now for the teeth, what I'm going to do is squish some little balls of white fondant onto my template so I can see that they're about the same size as each of his teeth. And then I'll cut off anything that goes over the top of the mouth. And then I'm going to move them off the template into Luca's mouth on my cake. You might need a little bit of water or edible glue just to stick them in place. And I'm just going to add a bit of shading with some of the powders, just so they're not really bright white. And I'm adding a tiny bit of gum. I couldn't tell on the template if you can see gum or not, so I'm adding a little bit of gum in there anyway. And I mean his actual gums above his teeth rather than chewing gum, guys. Let's put a little dot of white in each eye. This is just fondant. And if you want to darken around the eye at all, you can just run an edible pen around the edge if you find that easier than painting as well. Just watch that you don't get it all over the yellow part of his eye. So I'm going to give him some little freckles. I think the freckles that he has maybe. They're difficult to tell on my template. I should have really just had the film playing in the background, shouldn't I, while I was doing this to help me. But I've got a bit of the green and the blue powder mixed together for those. Now let's just add a bit of colour to our background so it's not too plain. The image I'm looking at looks like he's looking up to the surface of the sea. So I think this is the bit of the film where he's kind of gazing up, wishing that he was out of the water on the land, or wondering what it would be like above sea level. So I'm just painting some white and blue at the top. It doesn't really look like the surface of the sea a lot on mine, does it? But it still makes a nice background. It's okay. So it's kind of just streaks going across the board. Then I'm going to use the dry powders for under the sea part, so it looks kind of a bit misty. And I want to add blue and greens to this, and I'm going to try and concentrate more colour near the bottom so it's darker near the bottom of my board, so it looks like it's deeper in the sea. You can even add some black as well if you want. And there's a little bit that I've missed in the middle where I haven't put too much powder, but it's fine because our cake is going to sit in that area. So just keep going with the dust until you're happy. I'm going to add a bit of white dust up near the top, just so it looks like the light kind of coming down through the top of the water a little bit. Oh, that's what it's supposed to look like. It doesn't entirely look like that on mine. And I'm just adding a bit of the water. You can use buttercream. I realised I'd put my buttercream to one side, washed up the bowl instead of saving it to put the cake on. So I'm just using a bit of water on the fondant on the board because that will make my board go sticky. And then we're placing that cake on there. And then we don't have much space. So even though it's quite a big cake board in the background, I don't have much space for a body. So I'm just using that little bit of that green fondant we've got left over. And you'll just about see a bit of his neck and body here. He does have some scales, more on his arms. So I think I'm struggling to get those on here because I don't have quite enough body on show. But then you just want to put some powders on, greens and blues, so that matches with the face. And now for his ears, again, I've cut them off the template, or I've cut one off the template because I actually couldn't fit the other ear on the printout that I did. I'll template one, the other one we're just going to make up freehand and hope for the best. So I've pushed my rolling pin in to make a couple of indentations, and then let's cut 2 curves to get the shape. And we're going to need to dust this up so, again, it matches the colour of his face. I'll do the other one first. So the other one is a little bit bigger, just because of the angle of the face. This one looks like it's closer to the camera than the other one. So we'll dust those up shortly. I'm going to make the pieces of his hair, or scales, and I'm just using nicely thin rolled blue. You can use modelling paste or you can use fondant. The modelling paste is probably going to be a little bit firmer, but you can use fondant for this, it's fine. So I'm just going to cut a little bit off each circle. Now I'm going to need more circles than this, I think, but I'm just going to make a few at a time. I'm going to put some white lines on with my white pen. So this is an edible pen, guys, but you can just use white powder mixed into a paint or a white food colouring for this. Have you guys watched the film yet at all? Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed the film. I really enjoyed it. So I'm just going to put a bit of purple just on the very edges, and then let's dust up those ears. Or gills. They'd be gills, would they, rather than ears? So let's start by sticking these on. So I'm going to go all the way around. I'm just sticking a bit of water on the edge of them. And you can either press them against the board or you can press them against the side of the cake. And what I'm going to do is put a piece of fondant where I want his ear / gill. I don't know what it is. We'll call it an ear. To go. Just so it's not completely flat against the board. So the same on this one. And then we'll keep going with the scales or hair. So if you want to layer them up and you want some to look like they're higher up than the others, just put a small ball of fondant underneath it to give it a bit of height. And we'll do this all the way around. And the ones on the top kind of look like they're flopping backwards a little bit as he's going up in the water. So I don't want them to stick up too much. I want to kind of have them folded back. And then I'm adding a little bit of white powder along the top so it looks like the sunlight from above the water is just coming down and catching on the top of him there. Very messy, this one, with all the dust, but there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed making it and I loved the film. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like the video. And you can find new videos weekly on this channel. Thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and leave me a comment below. You can see more of my tutorials by clicking on the images on screen now. If you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button to stay up to date with my future tutorials. There are also links in the description box below where you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and more.